everybody, to another episode of Close the Gap. I'm JR. Y'all know the vibes. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, share. It means a lot to me. But let's get straight into it. We are on location, so you're going to hear some sounds. Hopefully the edit works. But you guys know how it is. I like it to be very raw and uncut, and especially sitting with my guest. The gentleman that is sitting here next to me, like I said, I made notes. Made beer at the age of 18.
Yeah.
Escaped a large forest fire.
Yeah, I did.
Graduated from UVA with a PhD in microbiology.
Kind of. I was a professor at UVA.
Okay, professor at UVA.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll skip that line. But you did go to Paris.
Yeah.
And you studied under Louis Pasteur.
Well, at the Louis Pasteur Institute in Paris.
All right.
That's like pasteurization.
Yep.
Pasteurized milk. That's what that's from.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you helped your parents run a winery. Is that correct?
Kind of. It's more, my brother's the one that built them.
Right.
But it's a family business. Like, everybody's involved in some way or another, whether it be money, whether it be like being like the CFO. But my brother really is the guy to put it all together.
Okay. All right. And then you said, yep, you became a professor.
Yeah.
And you were on the verge of getting tenure. Is that correct?
Yeah. It was one of those situations where I've been having second thoughts about what I wanted to do professionally.
Right.
And I was up for tenure.
Right.
And like it was a situation where I'm kind of like, I don't care if I get tenure or not. That's a bad sign. It's a long process.
Yeah, for sure.
And like the chair of my department was kind of getting together this superstar team to kind of coach me and get me through the process and everything. And I was just like, my heart's not in it. And I think it'd be like an ethical problem to me taking up all these people's time when I really didn't even care.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the final moment where I was like, I have to do some change and make things happen.
And that changes where we are,
Exactly.
sitting right here.
Yeah, right.
And then you actually, if I'm right, you won a few awards.
Oh, yeah.
With
Yeah.
these.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I really kind of consider myself a rum maker.
Right.
But our gin is our most awarded product.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, with our gin, we got a silver medal in the San Francisco World Spirits Competition. We won Best Gin in Virginia in Drink Magazine. We've gotten a couple other awards and kind of like craft spirits things. But our rums have won some awards too. Our anisette, which is kind of a black licorice flavor thing, has got an 88 in Wine Enthusiast. And our Damson Gin also got an 88 in Wine Enthusiast too. So that's at the national level and everything too.
So this humble young man is Ian. That's awesome because I had the opportunity to meet you at the wine festival in Richmond before this whole
that
hit.
was like right on the edge of
right
it.
there. It was right. That's exactly what I was telling my wife. I was like, this was the last time that we went out. Like,
it was the first time I went to the bathroom. I had to wait for a line to wash my hands. Like,
right.
That's a problem. Like, something's different here.
Right, exactly. And the rum was great.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you taking the time out to talk to me.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your origin story.
Yeah. So, I don't know where it all began, but I've lived in a lot of places. I was born in Chicago. I grew up in Boston.
Right.
I lived in the Bay Area. That's actually, so I got my PhD at Berkeley. In California. But then that's when I moved to Paris, and then I moved to Charlottesville after that. So I've lived in a lot of different places. But I've always kind of been into sciencey stuff, and that's like kind of the whole origin story of the alcohol thing. Is that like when I went to college, I wasn't old enough to buy beer,
right?
So I started making beer.
Right.
And that's the whole making beer when you're 18 thing, because I could buy barley yeast and hops.
Yeah,
so I could buy beer. So
right, it wasn't illegal.
Yeah, exactly. Like I was allowed to do that. So, but I went through a phase of making really crappy beer. So I decided to take a microbiology course in college.
Okay.
And like my extra credit project was isolating and identifying all the organisms that were growing in my beer. There's all stuff. There's actually the things that was making it taste bad was this organism called lactobacillus, and it's in yogurt, but it's also in your mouths a lot.
Okay.
So I was like slobbering in my beer and contaminating it. But that got that whole process got me really interested in microbes.
Right.
And so that I kind of had a parallel career where I went down a microbiology, kind of medical microbiology career.
Yeah.
And that's my PhD and everything's in. But then all through that, ever since I was 18, I've been making alcohol in some shape or form too. And that's kind of how this tour linked and things came back together.
But I think I think for me that's interesting because for some, and again, the purpose of this podcast is to help people realize that they can achieve, that goal regardless of what path they may be in. And yours was very interesting because, well, who would really? Some would just say, you know what, I'll take the paycheck, and I'll take the steady 9 to 5 and not become an entrepreneur. But it seems like, and you've probably heard this before, it seems like it's in your blood.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, there's a certain, you have to have a certain comfort with risk. I mean, if I had stuck in my tenure track position, I mean, I kind of would have had, in theory, a job for the rest of my life, good salary and things of that sort.
Yeah.
But we only have so many years in our life.
That's a fact.
And we have to make them count.
Yes, I agree.
And so that was really the point where I got to. I'm like, if I did this the rest of my life, even though I'd be comfortable, I'd probably have regrets when I'm on my deathbed. So I'd make a change.
Yeah, no regrets, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
I try to live my life so that in the end I'm not regretting anything. I'm sure there'll be things, but I try. I try.
I mean, that's the goal, is to try.
Yeah.
So I ask this question to everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you remember what part about being an entrepreneur in the beginning that kicked your ass?
Oh, that I got beat up by?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's so many things. It's grueling. I would actually say it's grueling both in terms of hours and stuff. I was used to pretty long hours. Like I was in shape for that. But the level of uncertainty and risk, but also you always have to be on your feet learning a new thing. You can never you're never at ease because I had to become an accountant. I had to become a marketing person. I had to do the alcohol production part. I was comfortable with. That's what I enjoy.
Right.
But then there's hiring and firing and managing and all that stuff. You're always learning something new, and that means that's draining. I mean, I enjoy it, but it's very draining to always be learning.
Right, because that's that part, right? Those other components of running a business.
Yeah.
Because you go in there with the passion. I enjoy making rum, and then it's like, crap, I need to pay taxes, or I need to hire people, train people, or and that's part of the good and the bad. Is that I am doing the alcohol production part that I really enjoy. Right.
But I'm not that. I don't enjoy doing accounting. I like seeing the flows and being on top of the business and having my finger on the pulse.
Yeah.
I don't like they're putting in checks and paying bills and stuff like that. So.
I mean, to be honest with you, I wouldn't either. I would just like to see, like you said, keep the finger on the pulse.
Yeah. Seeing
the numbers.
Yeah.
But actually sitting down and doing them.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, and that's what eventually. And that's actually a balance that I have to grapple with.
Right.
Because if we grow more, that means that in theory I could hire an accountant.
Yes, true.
But the more we grow, the more separated I am from the production of alcohol, things like that. So, for me personally, I'm also often weighing out how big I want the company to become, because the bigger it becomes, the more separated I am from all the moving pieces and stuff that I enjoy.
So can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I've heard this in the past. The further away an owner is away from the company, possibly the more revenue that comes in there.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that? Does that?
Yeah. And that's exactly the battle that I was talking about. I was pretty explicit in my business plan. Mm-hmm. So I had to write up a business plan both for my investors, but for the bank too. We got some money from the bank to buy this building, and something like that. And I pretty explicitly said our goal is to become a well-respected and established Mid-Atlantic brand.
Okay.
We don't want to be I don't want to be national.
Right.
And we are a little bit, but
just a little.
Right. But just opportunities arise.
Sure.
And we take advantage of them. because of my fear of becoming too separated from that which I enjoy.
Yeah.
So, so even though I want to be solid, we have to make money. The more money that we have, the more resources we have to do things that I enjoy doing. But I don't, I'm not aiming to, get this company bought by a big international company or anything like that, which is a business model for a lot of folks.
It really is, right? Some people don't mind getting bought out.
Yeah, I mean, I could actually be looking at some business and some other distilleries. I'm like, they're aiming to get bought because it's kind of presented in a certain way to catch the attention of the big guys.
Well, you can see that by just...
I think so. I mean, I have suspicions. No one's ever said anything, but if I was to have that goal, I'd be running my business a lot more like these other businesses rather than this. And because we have the Darden School of Business here at UVA.
Okay.
So I pretty regularly get Darden MBA students coming in here and kind of chatting about the business and all. And many of them are like, "Oh, so what's your exit strategy?" And I'm like, "I die."
They get buried back here, right?
Because especially in the business world, the exit strategy is usually either have an IPO or getting bought by a big company, and I don't want either of those things. So it's kind of a foreign concept that this is just kind of a personal thing that I want a solid company that's basically a family-run company and everything.
And I think that's I'm glad that you shared that, right? Because people do need to hear that. Because to your point, they keep hearing, "What's your exit strategy?" Or they might share their business plans with others. Yeah. And that's the question. Yeah. And in their head, they're like, "Wait, is it okay for me to have this business, just for me to grow and enjoy?" And
well, I mean, that comes down to your personal goals,
right?
Are you making a business to, even if you enjoy it to some degree, but make a business so that you cash out, have millions of dollars, and then you get to fish for the rest of your life or something like that. Or whether you want to have a job that is the thing that's fulfilling, but that means you have to maintain that job in a form that is fulfilling for you.
Yeah, and then it's okay either way.
Yeah, totally.
Because like you just said, it's what you want, and you go for it, right? Yeah. One of the biggest things that what I've learned from you by doing a little bit of research is community is a huge thing for you.
Oh yeah.
So when I say working with the community, what does that mean? What's the first thing that comes to mind?
So...
And tell me how you work with community.
Yeah, so I'm kind of developing a concept, and this is on our website a little bit. And this is both from a business perspective, but it's more inclusive than that. I'm not sure if you've been much in the wine world, but they have this concept of terroir. Terroir is a French word, honestly, for land or region or something like that. And so in the wine world, when people talk about terroir, it includes a lot of things, but it tends to be the exact same grape if you grow it 100 yards away. Okay. It can be yield a very different wine because of the angle of the sun, the soils are a little bit different, the wind is in certain ways, and also the person that produces it may be a little bit different. So all these components contribute to the flavor of wine. I'm trying to develop this concept of community terroir, where that is that our products reflect the unique combination of people and businesses in our community. Okay. So an example of that is we're 50 feet away from the former home of Ace Biscuit and Barbecue. Right. Luckily, they're still close by. But basically, I was sitting out here at these picnic tables 5 years ago when we were building this place, and I was talking to Brian, the owner of Ace Biscuit, and I was telling him we're making rum. Rum comes from sugar cane. He's like, "Oh, I used to use sugar cane. I cut it into skewers and make shish kebabs on it and put it on the grill. So that sugar cane would get grilled and everything. People love kind of chewing on it afterwards. I'm like, that's an idea." And so so our golden rum now, I collaborate with Ace, and I get fresh sugar cane. He grills it on his grill. And
really good, by the way.
And so it's unique. As far as I know, there's no other rums like that. And it only happened because of being here, being in this spot. Right. So that's one product. We have a coffee liqueur. I collaborate with Mudhouse Coffee Roasters down the street. They did a special blend and roast. We have a damson gin, which I work with a local farmer. He gives me damson plums to make that damson gin. A lot of our components of our gins, we have 18 different botanicals in there are from local farms.
Yeah.
Ginger from a farm in Powhatan.
Okay.
We get our lavender from the Shenandoah Valley.
So where did that come from? Where did that? Yeah, I'm very curious.
You know, it's a little bit funny because Charlottesville is the first place I've lived where there is a distinct community. I've lived in big metropolitan centers where, at least in my world, I had friends and stuff like that, but I didn't interact with my neighbors that much. It was pretty easy to be a nameless person in the crowd.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was something that was quite shocking when I first moved to Charlottesville. I'd go for a walk on the weekend, and more than one person was like, "Hey, I saw you over at Monticello walking." It was a bit creepy, but
I agree, because moving from a city where people don't say hi, like you said, I get it, because I'm from that D.C., Maryland, Virginia area, and that part, people don't say hi. Yeah. So I understand exactly what you mean.
So I became upon moving to Charlottesville.
Right.
I was a little freaked out at first, but I became more and more enamored with all these connections. Now I moved to a neighborhood now that's really a pretty tightly packed single family housing. But like you sit on your front porch, and you talk to people going by, and things like that. So I became fond of my community, as well as the kind of the strength and interestingness, not that sort of, but it's interesting, getting to know people that you normally wouldn't know because they're kind of a slightly different demographic than you or something like that.
Right.
And it adds a lot of strength. So I like interacting with these people, and I think having all these bonds in one way or another is fulfilling.
Yeah, because the artwork on the bottle.
Yeah, right.
Was that also an artist here?
Exactly. So she's that's Laura Gastinger. She's a acclaimed botanical artist, and she is the wife of one of my wife's coworkers. So we kind of knew her anyways.
Right.
And even before she did the drawings of the bottles, we actually commissioned her to do some art in our house.
Okay.
We kind of find interesting plants and stuff in the woods. We bring it to her, and she would kind of do drawings and stuff. We now have that up on the walls of our house. So we already had a relationship.
Yeah.
And she's a superstar. I don't know what she's up to on Instagram now, but I think she's at 100,000 followers.
Man, let me tell you, the design of the bottle, when I dug in a little bit about it, it's that's neat. Yeah. And the artwork is pretty amazing too.
She's awesome. And honestly, I can't take much credit for all the bottle design. We did work with a design company.
Okay.
But my wife is a landscape architect, and so she has a sense of design.
Right.
I don't have so much, so I call her my chief aesthetics officer.
Okay.
So she makes the decisions about she worked with the design company, she worked with Laura. I'm just kind of there in terms of how much does it cost? Is it going to break?
Right.
But I kind of step back a little bit to let people that are better at that stuff do the job.
And I think that's a lesson for people to know as
absolutely.
Right? And sometimes you have to let go. If you don't know it, it's okay to ask those that might to step in.
And I think that's often said of a good leader.
Yes.
Is to find good people,
right,
and tap into those to their talents.
Right.
Yeah. So you can't be everything. So it's better to find people that have those strengths.
Right. And I know we're bouncing, but when I reassessing, right? Because you reassessed your life, right?
Yeah.
How important was that reassessment to you, and then how did that help benefit you, moving forward?
Yeah. So, although you mentioned some of the things that were kind of they were acute things that happened in it was 2012. All those things you basically mentioned, my forest fire. I got cancer for the first time, just skin cancer, whatever. My first old man's disease.
Right.
I turned 40. I was on a pretty intense jury duty. A lacrosse player here at UVA beat his girlfriend to death, and I was on the jury, so I had to look at photos of a girl that was beaten to death on a daily basis. It was emotionally taxing, but all those things happened in a very short time period, so it was very shocking.
Yeah.
But those were the catalysts. It had been a long time coming where I was becoming less and less enchanted with my daily life.
Okay.
And I have to admit too that I had a life that permitted me to change. I don't have any kids.
Okay.
My wife is pretty well employed. Like,
Right.
it came right down to it. If I didn't make a cent, we could still get our mortgage paid.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
So, like, I was in a position to take a risk, but because I didn't have lots of things on the line. If I had a kid, I'm not sure if I would have done it. You know, because I got to make sure that, like, they have the money for college and all that type of stuff. And
mortgage is paid and everything is taken care of.
Yeah.
Right.
So I don't know. Like, I truly don't know. It's impossible for me to judge. But I had a life that allowed me to change too. So it took less courage.
No, I think, you know what, I don't know if it was less courage, but because it's still encouraging, because like we mentioned earlier, that 9 to 5 people like, and there's no judgment.
Yeah.
You know, but people hold on to that.
Yeah.
You know, because jumping the bridge or jumping over that cliff to go become an entrepreneur and now having to be self-sufficient to gain that revenue. I mean,
and when it comes down to it, like, even though I have employees now, I'm the one that is at the end of the line. If they get sick, I'm coming in here to do that job. Like, I mean, if they have to move away. Recently, my distiller is my previous distiller. His wife got a really good job offer up in Portland, Oregon.
Okay.
He gave me like 2 months notice, which is awesome. I really appreciate it. But like, I now had to step in and take, and so like that's something that you never know what you're gonna have to step in to do.
Is that should more business owners do that, or should more business owners be like, well, you're leaving 2 months, I should hire another person before you leave?
Yeah.
Or is that just you, Ian?
A lot of business owners wouldn't have done that. You know, they would have essentially fired them immediately.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah, just once you give a notice, like, just to get somebody out of there. But it's a matter of trust.
Yeah.
Honestly, my background, so I was a scientist. I was a professor, and I was primarily a research professor. So 15% of my employment was teaching. So I did some teaching, but not a lot.
Right.
Most of my time was running a research laboratory.
Okay.
Which means I have students come in, and I'm basically their mentor. They're whatever 67 hours, 70 hours a week while I am.
Right.
And those people became my family. Like, I still keep in touch with them. I don't have kids, but I really considered those people that I spent 60 or 70 hours a week with for years. So like, for a PhD, it's like 6 or 7 years.
Right. Oh yeah.
So they became my family, and I still have that mentality as a manager, as an owner, like, where these people are my family, and that's another reason to keep smallish is the relationships with them.
Yeah.
And especially when like hard times like this whole pandemic hits us, we're in it together, and I have been doing my best to keep them here, and like I promised them a certain amount of time, as long as in terms of being paid and everything like that.
Sure.
But eventually a reality sets in. But if I was a cutthroat business owner, they would have been gone.
Yeah, no, oh man. I'm fortunate enough that I work with a wonderful boss that allows, just like you, family, and we're in this together, right? But I also know companies that will slice, you know, we're cutting the fat, you know, and no knock to them, but it's kind of rough, especially going through a situation like this, and then what? You know, where
I've certainly been in places too where it wasn't even financial. Like, if I'm just using this as an example, but if my distiller had come to me and said, "I'm leaving," a lot of places don't trust me, and that's why they put them out the door immediately. And like, they still get their 2 weeks pay or whatever, but it's just they don't trust that person to be there if they are no longer loyal to the company.
Right.
And that's what I have. I try to promote a relationship with my employees that will be a situation where I trust them. They'll give me 2 months notice rather than being gone in a day.
Right, exactly. I'm
so
leaving today. Sorry.
So it's good for everybody involved as long as you have that trust. So
now, how important was it when you opened the door here to build that culture?
Yeah. So
how did you build that?
Well, you know, it was a while before we had any employees. I was here alone for about a year and a half. And so that means it's a one-on-one relationship. Right. You're hanging out with that person, and it's tough to have in a one-on-one when you're working with somebody one-on-one, shoulder to shoulder. It's tough to make them an abstract property of the company type of situation.
Yeah, right.
And that's what I think it doesn't have to be that way, but that's another thing with the growing of a company is the separation of people. So it's more difficult to maintain those relationships.
Right.
The more people you have, because you start getting specialized and kind of being compartmentalized, and you interact with people less.
No, I think, and that's awesome. Because again, one of the points is you were here by yourself for a year.
Yeah.
So it's okay. It's okay. I mean, you're going to have to get your hands dirty. It's yours.
Well, and that's how I learned a little bit of everything, so that I can step in and help people out doing the various jobs around the place.
Yeah.
And everything too.
Teaching them what you did wrong.
Yeah.
And so that they won't make that same mistake down the road.
Yeah.
And we mentioned earlier those many hats that you have to put on as a business owner. Marketing. Yeah. Out of everything that I've heard, how did you learn how to market?
I'm not sure I have. Honestly, because in terms of the whole business plan thing, marketing was my weakest part. I did do some online classes.
Okay.
So there's a lot of online classes now. I did it at the Wharton School.
Okay.
I did a bunch of that things. But that's also that is book learning.
Sure.
That is never 100% tuned into what you need. So it's kind of like starting. I build I'm a basic architecture and the ideas of segments and the type of them, not demographics, but the segments of culture that I'm aiming for and kind of designing our business for.
Right.
But then on the ground, you feel it out a lot.
Yeah, sure.
And we don't do it so much anymore, but certainly in the beginning, I actually had our tasting room manager. He would poll people. He would ask them, what brought you in here today? And so I wanted to have a little bit of feedback about if my money was being well spent in one area or not.
And where were you putting those marketing dollars, if you don't mind me asking?
So in the beginning, we kind of spread it out all over the place. We did print, radio. We've never really done TV just because of the economics of it being expensive.
Yes.
And digital, kind of the social media places.
It's kind of hard. It's pretty hard to do Google Ads, right? To promote liquor, because your campaigns can be, and that's kind of my world.
Yeah.
I know doing the social media marketing and the Google Ads and all that. So how did so I'm assuming, since you really can't put money towards a Google ad because it's kind of tough, because you could get your ads rejected because they're not going to allow you to do anything to serve alcohol. Facebook and social media, I'm assuming you leaned on that.
Yes, I would say that most of we do a little bit of Google, but it's simply like an ad for the distillery existing. There's no booze.
No keywords. It's anything like that.
Yeah. So, but there are guidelines in terms of alcohol. I basically have to have my settings in Instagram. But essentially, we can only have followers that are over 21, and it's different for each country. So most of what I do is restricted to the United States, and there's different laws and whatever, because in theory, anywhere in the world, people could be tuning into us or something.
Yeah.
So my ads don't go outside the United States. And it's a lot of the same with Facebook. I had to do a lot of extra work, kind of narrowing down who gets to see these things.
Yeah, that's always that tricky part, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to get in trouble for digging to showing somebody under 21.
And I don't want to. I told you, those aren't my customers.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And that's important for people to hear, right? It's if you can't use a certain platform like Google Ads because of whatever you are marketing or selling, use the other platforms, right? Now, do you put any marketing dollars, paid ads in Facebook?
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Yeah. It's pretty basic stuff, though. I tend to boost things that are kind of real time. Things are happening right now. I tend to do boosting and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I do have kind of low level, the existence of Vitae Spirits ads running in the background.
Right.
I do a couple $100 a month.
Okay.
Just kind of on that stuff.
Now, how was those? Have those?
They help.
Helped in
They
any?
help because I actually those ones I leave more broad in terms of who they're targeting.
Yeah.
So they'll just kind of pop up in random locations, whereas my daily boosts, I do kind of narrowing and what are people are interested in cocktails, people are interested in distilling or
location
beer.
as well. Like
I do location too, and I do. It depends what I'm doing though.
Yeah.
So like if it's something like if it's a cocktail that you're getting in our tasting room, I do like a 50-mile radius or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's our bottles, which are kind of Virginia, DC, New York now too, like I'll do a little bit broader if it's about the bottle or something. So I kind of like I make a decision about the most appropriate place.
What makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? Because I mean, you're not gonna say, "Here, come to the cocktail and you're in New York." Like,
exactly. Yeah.
What am I going to do with that?
Exactly.
But you boost, like you were saying earlier, because your marketing has changed.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Before this whole coronavirus or this season that we're going.
Yeah.
Explain a little bit to me and the audience, how has that marketing changed? What have you been doing differently?
So I've certainly gone more digital, because people are in their homes.
Right.
And the major way to get people in their homes these days is online.
Okay.
We've also, to some degree, focused more locally also.
Okay.
Because, a good portion of our sales before the pandemic was in restaurants. And essentially all the restaurants are closed. So we're not selling, like bartenders around the state are not selling our stuff because the bars are closed. So really most of our revenue is now from home delivery and curbside pickup.
Okay.
And that's a much smaller radius.
And that's new, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we had to adapt to it.
Yeah.
And like I said, we're doing okay in terms of doing that. But if we're only doing home deliveries within a 5-mile radius, and most people are doing curbside pickup, that's a much smaller zone. It's like a much smaller geographic zone than what we were working in the past.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
So basically, we are essentially down to we do local radio. We do local NPR radio.
Okay.
And they allow us to kind of update pretty regularly in terms of like announce that we have curbside pickup and home delivery.
Now, how does that work? Do you just send them a script, or do you?
I work with them. So it's NPR.
Okay.
So they have legal restrictions because they're a nonprofit and things of that sort. So I basically go to their rep and I say, this is my goal in terms of what I want people to hear on the radio and take action on.
Right.
And there's a word limit, a time limit, and there's certain things you can't call to action. Like you can't say, come grab a cocktail for $10.
Yeah, right.
You have to have be a little bit more vague. But I do that with an NPR station because to some degree, that is also the target segment to some degree that we're looking for. Because we are a little bit more expensive, we're a little bit more, I have to say, like, it's people that want to engage more with the product, which tends to be people that are more educated and spend more time geeking out, reading the back of bottles. And that's a little bit of the NPR zone. It's people that are more verbal, and that's something that's pretty different on NPR. On your average radio station, when I'm just listening to music, my brain tunes out. Like when someone starts talking.
Yes, easily.
But on NPR, people are talking all the time, and that's what people are focusing on: spoken word.
Exactly. To your point, that's that audience, right? Because some of your audience are geeking out to like the bottle. I mean, you can't. That golden rum, is that right? I mean, the way that's made. Yeah. And if
it's a story.
It is a story.
Yeah.
I think all your bottles are stories. Yeah. And I appreciate you sharing some of that marketing. Yeah. Because people do need to hear that again. But here's that last one about marketing.
Yeah.
Are you doing it yourself, or who does it, or how's that whole?
Yeah. So essentially, yes. I do not have a consultant or anything like doing our marketing. Yes.
Right.
So everything so far has been me, although it is true that people come to me too with ideas. And they're the Virginia Distillers Association too, so that's kind of like our guild in some ways. Virginia Distillers banding together.
Now, did you have to get involved with that? I know I'm bouncing everywhere, but
we don't. You don't have to get involved. I don't know what percentage of Virginia distillers are. I think it's probably half of the distillers that exist in Virginia are part of that association.
Okay.
We pay dues.
Right.
A lot of that goes to lobbying. You know, like every January, a bunch of us distillers go to the State House and work with our lobbyists to help improve laws.
Yeah, because you helped improve.
There's a bunch. Like
right.
we couldn't even really have tasting rooms 4 years ago.
Yeah, I read that. Something about you also helped cut taxes.
Yeah, that's at the federal level.
Right.
So yeah, that's a little pain in the butt, but yeah. Well, it's because we want it to be permanent, and it's on a yearly renewal right now. So every single year we have to go to the Capitol and lobby.
Right.
So we're really trying to get it permanent. But yeah, that is simply that under past circumstances, all distillers pay, and forget, I've paid it a while, $11.20 per gallon of alcohol produced.
Okay.
At all sizes.
Okay.
We did get basically a craft beverage bill passed.
Right.
That makes it so that the first 100 gallons that's produced by anybody, even the big guys, you only pay $2.70. So it's a huge reduction from $11 down to $2.70.
Right.
And it's only, and that primarily helps the small guys pay a little bit less taxes, and it makes a big difference. I mean, for us, it's almost someone's salary a year that we save. By doing that, so
I mean that's amazing just to even have that opportunity for even because you're helping somebody. Imagine somebody just coming into the business.
Oh yeah, the barrier to entry is a little bit lower.
Right. And then knowing that, I mean that's
And I have to admit that in the early days, basically when I was kind of looking into doing this, it wasn't such like the distilling community has actually opened up quite a bit. In the early days, there were a couple of distillers that explicitly said, we don't want to make the laws better because that'll lower the barriers to entry, and then I'll have more competition. But they've honestly, those naysayers are now outnumbered by new people that are much more open and people that believe that the tide raises all boats rather than just in this for me type of situation.
I agree.
And it's proved itself a lot of different ways. So we are being craft distilling is now being recognized as an industry as a whole because there's enough of us all working together
I wasn't familiar with the industry till a few years ago.
Yeah.
Actually moving to Richmond was when I actually had my very first craft beer. And then from there I just started to get educated because I was like, wait, this was always around? Like and then distillery.
Yeah.
Because I'm from Dominican Republic and El Salvador, so Dominican Republic has some really good rum.
Frugal.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess my point is, to what you were saying, is I was noticing just in that little area where I am, this distilleries are just starting to just pop up.
Yep.
But then I'm like, what the heck is a distillery?
Yep.
And then I was like, oh crap. Wait, this is where they make?
Different. I know. It's really funny in the very early days because people are still very familiar with craft brewing, with beer. Yeah. And when I told people I was opening a distillery, they're like, "Oh, what type of IPA are you going to make?" And I'm like, "I'm not making beer. This is something different."
Liquor. Right. This is that. Right. So I didn't. Right. That's exactly who I was. I was like, "Wait, is that what they're calling the places where they make beer?" And then when I started to realize, like, no, that's the place where they actually sell the good stuff.
Yeah, it's different.
So then, really quickly, tell me how you got from, making the beer at home to now learning how to control your equipment, and how did you even know what equipment to get?
So it was a slow process. Like with almost anything that you learn, you kind of start with simplicity.
Right.
And as you kind of feel comfortable at that level, then you kind of look for something a little bit more.
Okay.
A little bit more of a challenge.
Sure.
And so I still do beer. And I got pretty serious about it. Like I actually entered kind of amateur competitions and I won some awards with my beer.
Right.
But I wouldn't say I got bored, but I was always looking for something new. And then as I mentioned, like my brother started winery, so I got into the wine business too. I'm part owner of our 2 wineries in Arizona.
Okay.
And I even 2007, I worked harvest. I worked crush down there. So I worked in the fields. I did forklifts. I did trucks. I learned how to do that stuff. So I became very familiar with wine.
Okay.
And then once again, always looking to learn something new. kind of the next step led me to distilling. Yeah, and you have to make a pretty good beer to make a whiskey.
Yeah.
You have to make a pretty good wine to make a brandy.
Right.
And I guess fortuitously, one of my students when I was a professor was from North Carolina, the backwoods in North Carolina, and he didn't go anywhere without like his family still.
Right.
So I went under his house in his backyard, and I kind of like one of my students kind of taught me the basics. Cool. And then once he moved away, I brought his still off of him and started doing it in my garage. And I was basically developing a lot of these recipes in my garage.
So it's really what I'm hearing is trial and error?
A little bit. I mean, there's a certain degree of, yes, you can do it by trial and error.
Okay.
Honestly, my academic training as a microbiologist and having chemistry background and everything too gave me a little bit more wisdom from the get-go than I would say your average person. But, But yeah, I mean, you can do it by trial and error. Technically, actually here, I do a weekend-long distillation class where people come. I limit to 6 people, so it's very personal. But we set up fermentations, we do tastings, we run a little 3-gallon still.
That's awesome.
And that's another way to do it. And I once I just decided that like I wanted to make this a profession, I actually got a certificate in craft distillation at the Seibel Institute in Chicago. So it's a couple-week-long kind of course.
Now, did you have to go to Chicago?
And I probably went there because I have family there. My dad still lived there, so I had a place to hang while I was doing it and everything. And so, but honestly, that was actually less about the distillation process. It was more about the business. It was about fulfilling government regulations, about how the architecture, kind of like finding a building and what you need in the building to be safe. So there was aspects of marketing, there was aspects of money, how to like build a business plan and go to the banks and stuff like that too.
So it sounds like if anybody really wants to get into this, they need to understand the ins and outs of
and that's what partly I also just was lucky to have training at our wineries. I mean, I was there essentially from when my brother started up, and I worked there, but also I'm on the board of directors of our winery. So like, I've seen, basically I had a model, and the wine business isn't that different than a distilling business. So like, I saw my brother build 2 separate wineries. So I basically had something to look at and say, there's all these things that I can apply to whatever my project's going to be or something too. So I was fortuitous to be in those positions.
Right. So I mean, it worked out.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
All right. So really quickly, let's get a little personal. So it does sound like you put a lot of hours into this.
Yeah.
And normally the answer that I get, a lot of hours.
Yeah.
So So I know you put blood, sweat, and tears, probably doing 12, 14 hours in the beginning.
Yeah.
Can you break some of those hours up to where did you concentrate your efforts in?
Yeah. It evolved with time.
Okay.
Because the truth is that starting the business goes in phases. So in the very beginning, it's all planning and gathering resources and doing research and stuff like that. So it was a lot of building the business plan, finding a building. I mean, there's all those considerations.
Right.
So a lot of the time was, honestly, that was office work for the most part.
Yeah. Right.
But once we had the building, this used to be a school, so we had to convert this building into a distillery. And so I had to work with engineers to figure out like heating and cooling systems to make sure it all worked out. I had to find suppliers to build the still for us, and that sort of stuff. I became kind of more of a contractor after the planning phase, and I became a contractor.
Right.
And then after that, I kind of became a distiller because kind of there was a period of deciding what products we're going to make, which then that to some degree defines what we have to do for marketing and kind of brand development.
Right.
So then after contract, I kind of became a distiller, product development person.
So during that stage, it's a lot of different hats that need to be worn.
But it is a progression. It was kind of like you move through phases. And now, like I spend less time with production now because we kind of got most of our products, and now it's kind of the outreach, sales, name recognition is kind of the phase that we're in now.
Right. Makes sense.
And maybe I suppose there'll be another phase, but I know what the next phase will be.
Right?
Yeah.
So how has entrepreneurship affected your family life?
Yeah, so I have to set aside specific days that I don't touch to maintain my relationships.
Right.
In the beginning, it wasn't properly balanced because basically my wife had Saturday, Sunday off, and I had Monday, Tuesday off.
Okay.
Because like these places have to be open on the weekends. Like most of your sales and stuff are on the weekend. But that's where employees help. So now I take Sunday, Monday off. It's kind of like the normal. So she and I overlap at least Sunday. We do fun things. And then Monday's like when I do the laundry and mow the lawn. And
do the stuff that you have to do at home.
Yeah,
the to-do list.
But it is like, as an entrepreneur, I'm sure you've heard this all the time though, I don't know what is work and what is not work. Because I, like, on those days off, I'm still in touch with my people. Sure. I'm making sure that things are still happening right. So my brain power is still being devoted to the business, even when I'm out doing personal.
Right, which makes sense. I mean, you can't. It's because, like you said in the beginning, it's your passion. It's still something that you
and I enjoy it, but I have to be careful of that too because I enjoy it, it can consume me, and I do have to step back and make sure that there's balance.
Sure.
Also.
Balance is the key.
Yeah, I know, and it's good for the business. Like me taking those days off, is good for the business too. It's not just for like my sanity, but like it makes me a more balanced person. So I deal with my customers better. I deal with my employees better. Whereas if I was running ragged, even though I would get more done at the company, I might not be as effective at getting those jobs done. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what motivates you?
It's partly wanting to do something that is meaningful to me. Okay. I like adventure. I like challenges.
Right.
I'm an active person in the sense that like I get bored. So like I like, instead of just having random scattershot things to put my energy into, I tend to like to focus on something that's important to me and put that energy into something that matters.
Right.
Rather than letting it piss off in a bunch of directions with no results in the end.
Yeah, you're very result driven.
Yeah, and I'm pretty focused and disciplined.
Yes.
And that like in terms of getting things done, that's how I find that things get done by focusing on it.
So weren't you training during that time, when you got out of that forest fire for a
triathlon? Yeah.
Yeah. So you training for a triathlon? Yeah, you have to be some sort of motivated and
I agree, but
that's
also, I don't do that anymore because it takes up your whole life. Like becoming really good in 3 different sports. It's just like so many hours in the day. Like I mean,
because you could take that same type of like principle and mindset. And,
absolutely. And that's why I think a lot of college students that are on varsity sports, they're actually really well trained. Like I mean, often the sports can't take them through their whole life, but they become really good like jugglers of their time because they're doing a sport while getting the work done, while staying healthy, and all that other stuff too. So like, in very many situations, and I learned that being a professor too. Being a professor was very good training for this. The organization skills, the time management skills, the actual the business plan that I gave to the bank. I built it just like one of my research grants. Like it was the same structure, and the bank literally said, "This is the best business plan we've ever seen," because it was so organized, like a proposal, specific aims, the resources, the timeline, the milestones, things of that sort. Right. And I built it just like the grants I've been sending in to do my microbiology research and stuff. So
that's awesome.
And management too. Like I said, I basically when you're talking about my relationship with my employees, that was from my professorship. So almost anything you do, you learn something of value. You just have to recognize how to adapt it and apply it to new situations.
That's strong right there. It's recognizing that, right, and putting it into the right place.
Yeah,
I like that. Yeah. That's good. Do you have? What are some of your greatest fears, if you have any? But not just what are those fears. How do you manage them?
Yeah, certainly one of my big fears, because this is a family business.
Yes.
My family put up a good portion of money on this.
Okay.
So like, that's pressure. Like I don't want to lose my mom's money. Right. Like I mean, she's like a retired lady and everything.
Right.
Like, and so I don't want to fail for myself, but it's more pressure on me to fail for my family.
Right.
Like, I mean, I would feel so much worse failing for them than I would failing for myself. So that's a lot of fear.
Yeah.
And like, none of them, like, they put down money that they can live without. But it's also like respect. It's doing good by my family.
Yep.
Things like I want them to be happy with what I've done for them and their involvement. I know they enjoy doing this, but if it goes south, they're not going to enjoy it.
Yeah. Right.
So that's pretty stressful. But I do like people have different ways of dealing with stress. I am a active person, as I mentioned. Yeah. So I a fair amount of like sports and stuff like that.
Okay.
Keep me fairly balanced. I do yoga a bunch of times a week. I did a 42-mile bike ride in the mountains yesterday.
Okay.
Or it was a couple days ago. It was correct. So and those are like I like doing things that are physically demanding, so that I keep my energy levels up.
Sure. Right.
But it's also a lot of the things that I do. You get into zones
where
I agree. Your brain is empty of external input. Like on my bicycle, there's times where I have to like worry for my well-being. Zooming down a mountain, I'm not thinking about this story at all.
I gotta make it down this mountain.
Yeah. Or things like I used to do rock climbing a fair amount. That's the same thing. Like you have to be in that.
You have to be in that moment.
And that washes out a lot of the tension and worries, at least for that time being.
I agree.
And so that means you're a little, like, you're kind of like empty of those things, and then you can start building empty.
Yeah. No, I agree tremendously with that, because it doesn't look like it, but I lift weights, okay? So it's kind of like when I'm stressed, right, I do the same thing. It's kind of like you. Wait, I have these weights I'm holding. I can't think about what's going on, because if these weights drop, that's my well-being. So I
really like to focus that anxious energy on something that's productive. You know, something like I drink, but I try not to drink for anxiety or like kind of using alcohol as a medication. There's destructive things you can do to deal with that stress and everything too. And I try to focus all of my stress into things that are positive in some way.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So
I appreciate it. I appreciate you sharing. So what is your favorite aspect about being an entrepreneur?
You know, I really like, so this is one of the reasons why I changed to this other reason being a professor. I like having a physical product. Like having something that I can hold in my hands that gives me joy is really satisfying. When I was a professor, it was basically papers. It was basically information.
Right.
And that was less satisfying. So I really like having a bottle, going to hang out with a friend and clunk down a bottle between us. And like that's my baby.
That's me.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I've been trying to do, and we both enjoy it. I'm proud of it. Something to chat about.
Dude, I enjoyed it, and I think I went to your booth 6 times throughout that home.
Like as soon as you showed up, I recognized your face because of that.
I was like, wait, because I was walking around. I was like, and mind you, this is a wine. Let me just make sure that I put some context in. This was a wine festival, so we're talking about all like really good wines. You know, across Virginia.
And bottomless glasses, too.
Yeah, bottomless glasses, right. And all I could think about was, I'm going back to this road table. Like, so, yes, I love it. Yeah, that was you're making a great product. So, really quick, let's just jump into some tips and advice that you could probably help share with some people.
Yep.
What piece of advice would you give someone who wants to become a distiller? Or who wants to own a distillery?
Yeah. So, I think, like, I talked about this a little bit before, but you really need a plan.
Okay.
Like, I mean, all the numbers and all the ideas have to add up. You know, I think I've seen other distillers, this probably applies to some other businesses too, is that they're very passionate about the process, producing alcohol.
Yeah.
But it's much more complicated than that. And if you're really passionate about it and you don't want to deal with that other crap, don't make it a business. So I think a plan's important, and really knowing at the bottom, in the end, the bottom line works out. It has to at least look like it can work on paper. Like if it doesn't work on paper, it's never going to
work. Right.
Yeah. So I think that's part of it.
Okay.
There is a lot of kind of operation stuff that are important too. Like if you plan ahead of time, it can save you a lot of headaches. Like if you set up your facility properly and everything flows smoothly from one step to the next,
Yeah.
It saves a lot of headaches in the future. And headaches can often become safety issues too. Like
if we talked about that, right?
Yeah.
This is the reason why you're located here in this part of Charlottesville is because this building was.
It's in manufacturing zone.
Right.
And so we produce a lot of flammable liquids, and that's part of the zoning is that we can only have a certain number of gallons of flammable liquids inside this building as it's built right now. And basically, we had to go to like the city and establish how many gallons they can be in there.
Right.
And so we work with a flammable liquid. It's something that we constantly have to be thinking about. Like we have little wires that we attach to our tanks so that they're grounded, so that we don't get sparks like from static electricity. We have pumps that don't make sparks. A lot of electric motors make sparks.
Right.
So if you're pumping around 190 proof alcohol and there's a spark around, it's not a good thing.
That's probably not a good thing.
Yeah.
But to your point, if you were at some other building or another location that's probably not in that zone, it could be a headache to probably just open your doors.
Yep, getting the rights. I mean, that's what you have. So that's something you have to know ahead of time.
Yeah.
You don't want to figure that out after you buy a building or something that you can't have flammable liquids in.
Right. What are you going to do with that building?
Yeah.
You have a plan.
And like I was saying, usually like with the production flow, if it's a real pain in your butt, that ends up to fatigue, which ends up to cutting corners, which ends up being like danger. So like really thinking about all that stuff, planning really pays off. Even if it takes a little time, either like hiring a consultant at the beginning or you taking more time before you jump in, I think that's important. And I think for other distilleries too, for the folks that just enjoy making booze, the truth is that you have to convince people to drink it too. And so you can't just make it for yourself.
Right.
And so that's a
good point.
That's part of the marketing and branding is that like you have to find, and you can focus on a very small segment and have it very focused on whatever 0.01% of the population.
Yeah, right.
But you have to have that in mind.
You do. It just can't be for you. You can't. I like it, but maybe that other person.
Yeah, and
might
there's
not.
also something. So this is a little bit in the wine world, but you can get cellar palate is the way like people that work in the production side.
Okay.
They call it cellar palate because you can kind of go down these routes where people are drinking every day tend to get weirder and weirder things because they're always looking for something new.
Yeah, exactly.
And then so you can evolve away and have this product that is so kooky that no one's going to buy it.
No one likes it.
So you have to have a certain amount of like interaction with your customers and kind of learn what they like and what they dislike, so that you're not just like producing for yourself.
No, that's good. That's good. If you had to change something along this journey, what would you change, if anything?
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I'm too cautious of a person.
Okay.
I like slow and steady.
All right.
But there's times when I feel like if I had taken more risks, like I would actually say, if I had acquired, like maybe taken out bigger loans, we could have moved faster and more effectively.
Right.
If I was willing to take those risks.
Okay.
But that being said, now during a downturn,
you're slow and steady.
Exactly, my slow and steady maybe
winning the race.
Yeah, like I mean, it might be we're in a better position right now because we're not super leveraged with tons of debt and things of that sort.
Right.
So, but there's certainly 6 months ago, I'm like, maybe I should have gunned it a little bit harder. Or,
so I mean, it paid off.
Well, so far. I mean, this is one of those situations where we're rolling with it, adapting as quickly as we can as conditions change.
Yeah.
So,
well, I appreciate. Look, and I appreciate your time.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you so much for
being by.
I appreciate the invite.
Yeah.
Honestly, you have a beautiful facility. The rum is really, really good. And can you share with the people how they can reach out to you?
Yeah. So we have a great website.
You guys do.
We now have, it's just vitaispirits.com. We now have an online shop, at least during the pandemic situation. We're allowed to sell stuff online. We're hoping that will continue after the pandemic.
Okay.
And that's all linked through our website. We are on Facebook, Vitae Spirits. We're on Instagram, Vitae Spirits. That's one origin of the name of the company. I had a bunch of names.
Yeah. Actually, yes. I'm so glad you mentioned it. And also mentioned the logo.
Yeah. So the logo, I don't have it on me right now. The the roundy thing, that's the ethanol molecule. So like that's 2 carbons, an oxygen, and
that's what I thought. And I had a feeling you were going to say it had to do something with the molecule. Okay.
So some of our branding is related to me being a scientist background, and that's one of the connections to that.
And the name?
And the name's Vitae, of life.
Okay.
And really the word itself comes from aqua vitae, water of life. And back when distillation was invented, alchemists were looking for kind of the elixir of youth.
Okay.
And a lot of people are.
Right.
But so the first stuff that came out of the still was called aqua vitae, water of life, because they could put like a pear in it, and the pear would never rot. And we now let alcohol as like a preservative.
Yeah.
So that's where the name came from. Because it was infusing life force into the pear or whatever. So that's where Vitae came from. But then honestly, I wanted a name that I could get VitaeSpirits.com. And so I wanted to make sure like all those things are still available, because a lot of things are taken.
A lot of things. Or if they're not taken, you have to pay somebody some serious money.
You have to buy it off of someone. They're like kind of reserved, and they like saw that as a potential name in the future or whatever. So that's part. I really like this name, and it was high on my list. But I did have other names that didn't work out because it was taken or trademarked or whatever. So.
No, that's cool. Man, I appreciate you sharing that.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you guys again. I appreciate you guys tuning in again. We're on location. You probably heard some trucks, but guess what? That's just the way it goes. You guys know how this show rolls. Again, go ahead and smash that like button, share, and I definitely appreciate it again. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Guys, thank you for watching. Peace.